So for more insight into the story, we now welcome to studio Ruth Wasserman Lande, a columnist on Arab affairs at the Ma'ariv newspaper, Deputy Director General for International Affairs of all local governments in Israel. She formerly served as advisor for President Shimon Peres and worked as an Israeli diplomat in the Israeli embassy in Cairo. Ruth, always a pleasure to have you here in studio. Thank you for being here in this historic week in the world of news.
Lovely to be here as well, Benita.
So I want to start with Benjamin Netanyahu's message, a very prompt message that was delivered by video for Joe Biden, the new president. Let's take a listen and then I want to hear your thoughts.
Sure.
Congratulations, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, on your historic inauguration. President Biden, you and I have had a warm personal friendship going back many decades. I look forward to working with you to further strengthen the U.S.-Israel alliance, to continue expanding peace between Israel and the Arab world, and to confront common challenges, chief among them the threat posed by Iran. I wish you the greatest success.
So a warm message there, but of course also mention of Iran, and all of this happening while tenders are being issued for new housing in the West Bank. Talk to us about what stands out for you about the significance of this message.
I think that it's very obvious that Israeli strategic relationship with the United States is key, both security-wise, in terms of the Middle East politics and so on. All eyes are looking toward Biden, the new presidency, Vice President Kamala Harris, as to what is going to happen first and foremost with the Iran nuclear deal. Yes or no? Will they be too soft? And how, of course, it will affect Israel and our newly found friends in the Gulf area. Everybody's standing on their tiptoes. And this very warm greeting by Prime Minister Netanyahu is as it should be, and yet the underlying tensions are there. Everybody knows that they're there. A new friendship needs to be augmented. A different policy, I would say, not 180 degrees different to the former presidency, but rather a very different policy, but not 100% opposite, because some things cannot be changed, like the Abraham Accords, for instance. But the tensions, the underlying tensions are still there. There's no question about it.
When it comes to the concerns, and we have been talking about them in the media for months now, about what a new administration would mean specifically for the relationship between the US and Israel, how is the timing impacted? Right now, one would imagine that Joe Biden has a lot of domestic pressing issues and that Iran wouldn't be first on the list right now. Talk us through the timing of how things are likely to unfold.
Well, the thing is that the timetable of President Joe Biden, given all the problems within, is not honing in very well with the very pressing issues on the international arena. And I'm not sure that the Iranian issue will wait patiently until the vaccinations and the issue of the masks and the huge pandemic issue, not to mention other very, very difficult, I would say, democracy-oriented situation that has shown itself in the US, the fragmentation, the need to unite the people and so on, that is definitely on the table of the new president of the United States. They will not put aside the issue of Iran. They will not put aside the issue of the Palestinians. And I think one proof of that, very, very quick to come, was the naming of the ambassador, the United States ambassador to Israel, to be also the ambassador to the Palestinian territories and so on, and the Gaza Strip. So the question is, there's no doubt about a change. Will it be 180% different? I believe not, but there definitely is something that will be trying to create a newborn interest in the Palestinian issue, a newborn reality within the attitude of the United States towards Iran, and hence the attitude towards partners in the Gulf as well.
It's interesting you make mention of the ambassador because, of course, on Twitter last night, we all saw the name change in terms of Israel and Gaza and the West Bank, and then it changed again back to Israel a short while later, just a little bit of jump-starting there, and obviously created a lot of confusion.
A lot of confusion, and I think that the issues, despite the fact that there are pressing and burning problems within the U.S., that just goes to show how international affairs, and we're all very concerned with our own affairs in the Middle East, and particularly in Israel and vis-a-vis Iran, are very much on the table.
Well, talking about the way people here in Israel are impacted, i24 News went out into the streets to find out how people here, the kind of temperature, how are they feeling about this new administration? Let's take a quick look.
Biden is a friend of Israel. There are many Jews in the Democratic Party. They will help us. The agreements they made, as well as the relocation of the embassy to Jerusalem, will not be annulled. And the president is a friend of Israel. He will not like to spoil the relations between us. I think he's a normal person. Trump was a bit abnormal. He did good things for us, but all of those who support him are people from the extreme right. And we, as the Jewish people, have suffered from those people.
I believe he'll be good for the state of Israel. What Trump has given is great for the state of Israel, but only theoretically. The Iranians, for example, did whatever they wanted after the sanctions and promoted their nuclear program. So what came of it? Nothing. True, Israel is attacking in Syria, but in reality it has not taken us anywhere. As far as the Iranians are concerned, we're more in a difficult situation today. I believe that dialogue can be more beneficial than strikes and sanctions.
I think Bibi will be able to fight him. It will be a little harder than Trump. Trump was much easier. It was like butter for him. I don't vote for Bibi, but I believe he will not give up against Biden.
Well, when we take to the streets of Israel, we know there's always going to be a range of conflicting opinions and views. But your sense on the ground of how important it is to people right now in this country, how things unfold in terms of the relationship with Washington down the line?
I think that if you look at the general person on the street, there is a fear, there is a concern. Generally speaking, despite people understanding that perhaps the former president was a little unusual, to say it diplomatically, he did take several steps that were very positive towards Israel, and I would mention one that is most definitely a positive, groundbreaking step, and I've said this all along, the Abraham Accords. The fact that really heeding no one and nothing, he just went straight on, and he got us to normalize relations for whatever reason with states that we've never had diplomatic relations with. They have been below the surface, but not on the outset. Having said that, there is a kind of an understanding, I feel, in general, that the Biden administration is in congruence with the general U.S. tendency to see the Israeli-U.S. relationship as a strategic one. I'm talking about the general understanding on the street. Behind the scenes, and in terms of diplomacy, and in terms of strategically oriented people and decision makers, a lot of work needs to be done. A lot of soothing, a lot of uniting, a lot of calming, certainly taking the steps that have been taken vis-a-vis the building over and above the green line at this specific moment is an indication that there may be certain differences, and they need to be settled down between the two sides, and it is strategically important.
And as you make mention of the Abraham Accords, of course, just today, Israel and Morocco signing their agreements for the direct flights, of course, literally taking off. Very briefly, though, a lot of concern about what the Biden administration would mean for future accords, future deals, normalizing relations around the region. How do you see this impacting, if at all?
Well, it's a very big question. Obviously, this has been the legacy of President Trump. One cannot take it away from him. It is connected to him, it was done by him, and this is his legacy. Having said that, He has the Iran issue. He has the internal issues. He did put the Palestinian issue further up in his agenda than making more and more peace agreements. And yet, I believe that the power of what has been already happening may have its own intrinsic strength. I believe that the pace will be slower.
And certainly we will all be watching to see how that pace unfolds. Ruth Wasserman Lande, it's always such a pleasure to have you here and hear your insights here.
Thank you.